Hello everyone, welcome to my programming club. Today we will be solving another daily lead code challenge, and the challenge name is Flatten nested list iterator. So you are given a nested list of integers. Each element is either a integer or a list whose elements may also be integers or other list. What the problem statement is saying is each element in this nested list is either a integer or it can be a nested list itself. Okay, so we have to implement the following functionalities. First will be the constructor of your nested list class, which initializes the iterator with nested list, and then is your next function that returns the next integer if there is a next integer at first place. So boolean has next is another function that you have to implement. It will return whether there are elements remaining to be iterated or say traversed, and otherwise it will return false. So your code will be tested for the following pseudocode. It's mentioned here that traversal of the nested list will be done with the help of your functions that you will be implementing as next and next. Okay, till your iterator or say iterator is having is pointing to a valid element in a list in the list, uh, you will keep giving next element in the sequence. For example, if the array given to you is like this, not array, nested list, then your final list should be looking like something like this. Okay, and as next we do that whether you have reached till the end of the list. Okay, if you reach the end of the list while traversing, then as next will return false. Otherwise, it will return true. Okay, that's the case. And yeah, and then next will return, let's say, currently your iterator that you will be or iterator that you will be making points to this element. Then when you will call iterator dot next for this, it will return 2. Okay, so that's the case. Now let's see how we will be implementing this function. First of all, we should be implementing this function, next function. Even before that, we will use the constructor to initialize. Our final list, final or say flattened list. Okay, and constructor to initialize our flattened list, and iterator for the list. Okay, so then what you will do is you will make a function flatten, and you will pass your list, nested list in it. Let's call it list as of now. Okay, then for each element in the list, you will do either of these two things. If it's an integer, then you will add to the final list, or say flattened list. Add to final list. Okay, and if it's not an integer, it's if it is a nested list, then you will recursively call this function flatten or that list. Let's call this sublist. Okay, so these will be two cases, and by recursively calling this function, you will be able to get a list which will be the flattened list only containing integers. Okay, so and to implement the next and the as next function, first of all we will be implementing as next function. For that, what we will do is we will declare a variable, integer variable you can say. Let's call it iterator. Okay, so and another variable you will declare which will be size. It will be the size of flattened list. And iterator will be initialized to 0 till your iterator is lesser than the size. You will return true. Okay, you will return this condition. It means there are elements in uh, your flattened list that are not yet traversed. There are elements in flattened list, elements or say integers that are yet to be traversed. Or you can say you have not reached end of list. End of flattened list. Okay, so This is how you will be implementing as next, and then coming to the next function, you will implement it. uh, Firstly, let's say if your has next is returning true to you, then you will simply call uh, you will return your flattened list element at the index of iterator, and you will increment it. Okay. Otherwise, if that's not the case, there are no elements remain to be traversed, then you will simply return null. Okay. That's how we will be implementing the solution. More will be clear while doing the implementations. Okay. So let's begin the implementation. There is no mention of what should we return in case this next function does not have any value. Is not is pointing to the last of the list. Anyhow, we will return a value that is currently not in a list. Okay. Today we will be doing the implementation in Java. So let's begin. First of all, we are declaring a flattened list. Let's call this flat list. Initially, let's initialize it with null. Then let's declare the iterator. Let's initialize it with nothing as of now. Now let's initialize the flattened list. So flat list will be equal to new array list. Okay, and then what you will do is you will initialize your iterator with 0. Okay, it is essentially nothing but the index of the flattened list. Okay, so let's call a function flat list, or say flattened list will be more suitable. Okay, and then let's pass the list that is being passed to the constructor, which is nested list. Okay, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now let's declare this function. This will be a private function since it will not be for the use of a person that is using this class. It will not be available to him. So let's declare it private. So flatten list and then list of nested integer and nested list. Okay. Now for each element in nested list, we will do either of two things depending upon whether it's an integer or whether the current element is a integer or a nested list itself. Okay, so let's traverse the elements of nested list. Okay, nested list. Then what we will do is for each of these elements we will be using a function. I think in Java it's is integer. It will tell whether the current element is an integer. If it's an integer, then we will add it to our flat list. Flat list dot add element. Okay, and then if it's not an integer, then you will recurse for the flatten list function. Okay, it's just a recursion. So let's call the recursion on this particular element. Since it is a nested list itself, nested integer. Okay, so element is being passed to the flatten list function again. So this will help us to at last get the flat list by recursively calling this flatten list function in case the current element is not an integer. Okay, and then these two functions are pretty much straightforward. Here you have to return whether your iterator that you have or say iterator that you have declared is lesser than the size of flat list. If that's the case, you will return true, otherwise you will return false. So here what you will do is, if let's say your has next is returning true, then or you have you can just call it, it will be the same thing. So if there are elements, still elements in the flat list, or you have not reached the end of the flat list, then consider this case. What will be the case? You will be returning the element at this particular index of the flat list, which will be flat list dot get iterator will be incremented to the next position. Okay, and if that's not the case, then you will return let's say we return null. Think it should be in small case. Okay, so this is how the implementation will be done. Let's try to submit it for the sample test cases before submitting for final evaluation. It's getting some kind of error. Okay, we have not declared the return type. Again, there is some kind of error. Instead of where, if we declare it nested integer, I think that should uh, do the trick. Because it's mentioned here, there is a is integer function in this nested integer that will return true if it holds a single integer. Okay, that is the function that I was using. Okay, so I think this should work. Okay, here also we have to use these functions, which is get integer. Okay, we kind of forgot to check out the functions that will be called. Here you will be calling get list. Let's try to submit once more. So as you can see, it's getting accepted now. So these two are the functions that it is a kind of a library you can consider. Library functions for this nested integer class. Three functions are there. First function is integer. It will return whether the current element or current nested integer is a single integer. And then if it's a single integer, then get integer will return you the int value stored in the form of nested integer. And then if that's not the case, you will get a list with the help of get list function. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let's try to submit for final evaluation. I think it should be accepted. Yeah, it's getting accepted. So this is how we will be solving the problem. If you are still having any doubts, please feel free to ask them in the comment section. I will be more than happy to answer them. So thank you for watching. Thanks.